So thank you for coming on the show. And since we are all trying to be relevant, my first question is about one nation, one election.
Mhm.
And I had two questions on that. One was the political aspect of it. Okay, is it practical that the BJP, with the numbers that they've got in the Lok Sabha elections and Rajya Sabha, will they be able to push it? And the second is, why do you favor the one nation, one election bill?
I favor the one nation, one election. That's the easier part to answer. Why I favor it is very simple. Because everything in this country is SOPs, right? You can't be a right wing country when you're so poor. In a democracy. In a dictatorship, sure, you can be absolute right wing, like say South Korea was. Build up crony capitalism and become. I mean, South Korea and Japan are entirely products of crony capitalism. You read America's early economic history; it became a rich country based on crony capitalism. It's after you become rich that all the regulations and these things come in. You read the economic history of the UK, for example. The 17 and 1800s were entirely crony capitalism. Early French capitalism, there is not a single capitalist country that did not start off with crony capitalism till it became rich. And then all the regulations and, the MRTP and things set in. You remember with the East India Company, at one point, it was the East India Company that controlled the British government and not the other way around. Till, of course, it made itself bankrupt, and then the government could, especially after the 1857 revolt, then it was sort of disbanded and the British government took control.
Yep.
So, this is in a country like India, you need a lot of SOPs and things like that. Clearest example is Delhi, for example. Okay. So, AAP gives you SOPs under 5,000, under 2,000 rupees. The central government gives you the balance ka over 5,000, over 2,000. एंड पीपल दे वांट टू डबल डिप, ये भी चाहिए वो भी चाहिए, तो स्टेट में आप सेंटर में बीजेपी, राइट?
Okay.
So we need to get out of that cycle, because the way economic reforms work is, when economic reforms are introduced, the first year will see a slump. The second year, you plateau the slump out. Sometime in the third year, growth starts again. In the fourth and fifth year, it becomes a boom cycle, which is when you want to go in for an election, right?
Okay.
Now, इधर क्या होता है with every state election? Because there are four money centers in this country: Bangalore, Hyderabad, Bombay, and Gurgaon. All of these elections happen at different times.
Mhm.
So, you can't synchronize policy that way. That synchronicity of policy is absolutely crucial. Like, you look at America, for example, the uh, presidential elections happen every 4 years, congressional elections happen every 2 years. So, governments plan ki kya harna hai, kya jeetna hai, and things like that, depending on if Congress is, if the party in the Congress is stronger, or if the party in the presidency is stronger, they will decide what to do.
Okay.
ठीक है? So it's purely a question of how to calibrate policy. It's bad policy to be having elections every single year with SOPs going, irresponsible SOPs going out. And in India, we only like irresponsible SOPs. We don't realize that anything that costs money ultimately comes back to you as debt and inflation and things like that, right?
Mhm.
So that's the main reason. Now, can the BJP get it through? I honestly don't know. I do trust their ability to cajole and um, you know, entice people to vote for certain policies. There's nothing a good, well-timed ED raid can't do, and change the mind of some implacable opposition. Yes,
Okay. It went to the JPC, if I'm not wrong, right?
it did.
And you were not in favor of that from your last podcast, if I'm recalling correctly.
I'm generally not in favor of anything going to any JPC.
Why not?
I remember about 10, 12 years back, JPCs, they had a certain caliber of questioning which was very, very high. Not uniformly so. The problem right now is in the JPCs, if you go through the list, the actual number of, geeky wonks on them
Mhm.
are non existent,
Okay.
or very, very few. Before what used to happen was, like in America, maybe the legislators aren't wonks on any given subject. Usually, some of them are. But they definitely have wonks in their team who are capable of extremely good, incisive questioning that refines policy.
Okay.
JPC, I've realized now, at least over the last few years, has become something of a tamasha.
Cool. Uh, but okay. And talking about consensus, Abhijit. So the point by the opposition is that it will lead to a presidential style election, and then BJP will sweep all the states. So what do you see that
That's
argument?
such a ridiculous argument. तो 50, 52, 55 में सब क्या था वो? Right. I mean, was that a presidential form of government? Number one. Number two, that is jargon for saying that voters are idiots. You think they don't know what is good for them. You've had the same election, same time, sometimes within months of each other, where look what happened. Maharashtra was just 6 to 8 months apart.
Okay.
Look what happened with Maharashtra in the central election and what happened with Maharashtra in the state election. Right. So this is I think the people saying this really need to be called out for the idiots that they are. I don't know why the BJP doesn't go after them and say तुमने voter को मूर्ख बोला, and then go around ढिंडोरा पीटोफाइंग saying कि whatever.
But then, do you belong to that school of thought that if the people have selected it, like people don't make wrong electoral decisions? Because they do. Like if you
Look,
historically see.
people make wrong choices all the time. Okay, but the point is wrong for who? Because
Okay.
I think it's wrong. I can't prevent a majority from doing what they want. No?
Yes.
I mean, why have a democracy then? We should do what Pakistan did, which was that, kya, the informed intelligentsia will form an electoral college kind of thing, the Ayub Khan basic democracy. फिर वो करो. And look, where did it get Pakistan ultimately? To be fair, it worked for Pakistan. In the 60s, they were way ahead of us in income, in everything. And then, of course, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto made Ayub Khan go into the war, and that destroyed everything for him. Okay? And then, of course, Zulfikar himself destroyed everything.
Okay.
Now, do people frequently vote in wrong people? Sure. But clearly, what is wrong for me is not wrong for them. They want something, and they pay the price for what they voted for ultimately. No? Elections are the surest form of karma. You get what you voted for.
Fair enough. Yeah. So, yeah, Abhijit, I was actually trying to, list down the question that I had for you. I had 20,000 questions, but I was trying to narrow it down, and I was picking up sector after sector. So one was one nation, one election. The second was economic reforms. So in that also, I picked the main question that I had, and my dad is obsessed with this, is with free ports.
Hmm.
Free ports like Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong. And why can't we have the same thing in, let's say, Andaman and Lakshadweep, where they're so strategically placed? What stops, let's say, Delhi to just get this project started and get free ports throughout India, get these economic zones throughout India?
So, the port is helpful if you have an economic zone. Every port needs to have, about 15 years more. About 15 years back, the hinterland for a port to function properly was a economic production area of about 30 to 40 billion dollars. Today, that economic hinterland of every port has to be 80 to 100 billion dollars. In Andamans, which is an ecologically sensitive area, you simply cannot build that kind of a thing without having all the migration and the production and things which will completely destroy the ecosystem. So let's talk about ports in the mainland. Now, let me give you an example of aviation because it's relevant to how technology has grown and why the nature of ports has changed. When I was a kid in the early 80s, the first foreign flights I took, Delhi to London, there wasn't a direct flight. You had to go from Delhi to Bahrain, Bahrain to Rome, Rome to London.
Wow.
Okay. Um, because the planes did not have that range. You
Okay.
couldn't even do Delhi to Madras direct. You had to go Delhi to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Madras. And Hyderabad used to be a 40-minute stopover. Unlike, say, Bahrain, where you all had to deplane and replane, and Rome, where you had to deplane and replane, at least in the domestic, you didn't have to deplane, replane. You sat in the plane for 40 minutes and then it used to take off again. This is when we had the 737-200s and the A300 B4s, which first came.
Okay.
Ships have become like that. They used to need to stop off at small ports. Today, they don't need to stop at all. A tanker needs to slow down to get into the Suez, but it can go basically from La Spezia, which is the harbor of the big harbor in northern Italy, all the way to Singapore without refueling. It just has to slow down for the Suez Canal. That's about it. Otherwise, full steam ahead, it goes straight through to Singapore. Before, it would have to stop at Port Said to refuel. Then it would have to stop in Bombay to refuel. Then it would have to stop somewhere in Vishakhapatnam to refuel. Then it would have to stop in Mandalay. Why do you think all these small secondary ports have become irrelevant?
Okay.
Right. So the fuel efficiency has improved so much. Like in planes today, you can go fly direct from Delhi to New York, no stop at all. It's a 12. Singapore to New York, you can fly direct, 18-hour flight. Right.
Yep.
So ships don't stop based on ports. That refueling logic has gone out because ranges now are so long. And in order to attract ships, you now have to attract ships with your economic hinterland. So the port follows the hinterland doesn't follow the port. Okay. Um, where are you going to? So first you have to create an SEZ around a port. You can do that in Tuticorin. You can do that in Vishakhapatnam. You can do that in Bombay or south of Bombay because Bombay is too clogged. The Navy takes up too much space in Bombay, at least the good harbor part. But where are you gonna set up the economic hinterland?
Yep.
So the nature, everything has changed in the nature of ports. So it's a very uh, पहले मैन्युफैक्चरिंग शुरू करो ports will automatically come.
Acha. Okay. So you said you're basically saying that free ports ka ROI is not as it used to be, let's say 30 years ago.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And you didn't Gujarat ports mention hai ki aapne. Why not like Mundra and
Again, the only use for Mundra port is the oil and gas exports because of the refinery.
gotcha.
It is not an international port, it is a domestic port, technically, if you look at it, for domestic needs.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Moving to my next sector, Abhijit, which was education. We're both the products of, well, I would say the same education system, more or less. You have criticized it from time to time. Um, where do you see the education system, let's say, given the NDA has 11 years in? And do you think that there needs to be a radical reform in the education system to, let's say, skill the Indian
I
youth?
think India is quite clueless about education. Uh, uh, but the problem was the UPA was too activist about education.
Okay.
Uh, and the NDA is clueless about it. You see, education is not a standalone. It fits into a whole sectoral thing. So why is it that when you finish your, say, in your 10th, after your board exam, you choose a specialization, science or commerce or whatever? Why is it the science you're taught in school isn't enough to slot you into an IIT or uh, what IIM or law school automatically? Why do you have to go for coaching classes? So first, there's a mismatch even between your immediate flow and your domestic thing, your primary education. Second, each state has made a tamasha of education. Central syllabus, state syllabus, at least coordinate your basic science, maths, English. Na? Nobody is saying you have to bring it under one board, but at least have a meet and decide that this is all the basic stuff that is going to be taught. Okay. Third is each state has a quota for its own state board. So private university, you have to give a quota to your own state board for this and that. So severe market distortion, severe syllabus distortion, severe mismatch of the gradation of the syllabus. You want to teach in native languages, but there is no one native language. You look at spoken Hindi and written Hindi, they're quite different. Spoken Tamil and written Tamil are totally different. They're like two different languages completely.
Okay.
Okay, and this is the case with a lot of languages out here. So you're constantly sort of you've distort first get rid of these systemic distortions. This is the very first step. Second step is you have a whole load of bullshit out there. Okay. Um, Things that you're never going to use in life, never read, never understand. Uh, why don't you bring in, especially in a country like ours, where you've got bad teachers in the rural countryside and things like that? Why don't you pick a great teacher for everything in every language and do the remote learning modules? Okay. Uh, the next thing is expectations. Every person who thinks that her son or daughter graduates from BE engineering or whatever thinks that their child is the next Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or whatever. भाई तुम्हारे बच्चों की औकात नहीं है झाड़ू पोछा करने की. I know IIT graduates are not झाड़ू पोछा worthy. They can't problem solve at all.
Okay.
You know, there's that study, several studies in fact, that show you 98% of engineering graduates in this country can't problem solve. तो काय का engineering सिखा रहे हो? रट मारो. That is not engineering. So engineering is problem solving. So now you are a pre-industrial country. You have not industrialized. You actually don't want, you want some segments that are problem solving, but overwhelmingly they just need to be basically educated to work in a factory, but nobody wants to work in a factory. You know, I went to Gujarat a few months back to deliver a lecture at the university out there, and I was shocked because the faculty were telling me that, you know, Gujarat was a place that never contributed to the IAS, never contributed to the army or whatever. Sab dhande pe lag jate the. Used to go out and start their businesses the moment they got out of school or basic college. Now, even in Gujarat, they want desk jobs. They want to sit at a desk and type. There is this culture where everybody wants to do services, nobody wants to do manufacturing, where manufacturing jobs are seen as bad. Mazduri hai. Hmm.
Yep.
So it's also a cultural thing. How are you going to overcome it? And the work culture is terrible out here. Let's be very clear about it. You even look at basic hospitality. Even a Taj or Oberoi, compared to an average five-star in Thailand, Cambodia, uh, is really crappy service.
Okay.
And you know, we used to notice this when I used to work in hotels in Australia. We used to keep getting people from third world countries over for 6 month semesters to work and learn in a first world environment. When we got the Indian batch over for 6 months, and this is something I noticed because they came after the Indonesian, Vietnamese, and Chinese batches. Uh, the Indian batch, if you first of all, they'd come up to reception or guest services or whatever. If they noticed a patch out there, kuch nahi karenge. They'll just come do what exactly what they're told and go back. The Indonesians and the Vietnamese would actually clean that. The Vietnamese, if they noticed it, they would proactively go. The Indonesians sometimes would clean it, but basically, the Vietnamese would actually, Vietnamese and Chinese would inspect it, see that it hadn't been cleaned. They will come back. Maybe they'll come back an hour or two later, but they'll come back with spray and a proper cleaning cloth and actually clean it. That is called a work ethic. You take your job very, very seriously and do it seriously. Here it's boss, right? So, you know, this time when I was coming back from abroad, I was at customs. Okay. Now I've had a bad back for a while, so I can't pick up my thing. Four of them standing up out there, they refuse to just help me pick up my bag to put it on the X-ray. They say, call the coolie, this isn't our job.
Okay.
So imagine how the rest are going to be.
But so when we're talking about dignity of labor, you're saying that, let's say, the Chinese or the Vietnamese are doing a better job at it than us?
Any day. Why do you
Okay.
think all the production and manufacturing has gone there? It isn't just because of regulation, it's also the quality of labor. A Vietnamese person knows that they are not going to become Jeff Bezos. Okay. They know that what they can do right now is labor and they make the best of it. Okay. But you look even at a street vendor. See, there's something cultural here as well.
Mhm.
A street vendor in India, his pots and pans will be filthy. Okay. I've seen people in dhabas out here who'll sit and wo hari chutney dete hain na with everything.
Yes.
They'll chop it on the bloody footpath. And it's not cooked. So you don't know what dog and cat has shat there, pissed there, what drunk person has vomited out there, or what drunk person in a car had couldn't control and then did diarrhea out there and whatever. And then you're eating it as green chutney.
Okay.
Okay. They won't even sharpen their tools. Their chopping is done on some broken board which hasn't been washed in God knows how long. All the chirka now, when you're cooking chirka, tel ka chirka, splatter of things is normal.
Mhm.
Gets crusted up over years in Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia. Yeah, Cambodia, Vietnam. Thailand at least is $10,000 per capita.
Yes.
Vietnam, Cambodia used to be lower than you at one point. They even wash where their truck was or their hand cart was. The next day, when that same cart comes out, it is spotlessly clean. This is why when you eat raw food in Bangkok or in Siem Reap, you're not going to get sick,
Okay.
right? Why don't we have that basic hygiene? We're so inured to filth. We're so accepting of filth.
Well, that's actually my segue. You mentioned we are not industrialized yet. If you look at NCR, Pune, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, this seems to be working in some fashion. Chennai. So, do you think that India is actually maybe in the services sector leading towards some urbanization, tall buildings?
Not really. See, it really isn't because you look at most of these big buildings, huge parts of them are unoccupied. They're
Okay.
the low income buildings, say a crore to a crore and a half. Imagine in India that is low income, are heavily occupied. The ones over 5 crores, most of them are investment and they're left vacant. So many of these so-called luxury buildings in Gurgaon area, Camellia, Aralia, M3M, Experion, all these builders,
Mhm.
60 to 40% of them, depending on the complex, are vacant. They've just been bought to squat on. It's like what MR did with Delhi Airport. What is called Aerocity today.
Yes.
Squatted on for 10, 15 years. Uske baad hi construction start hua because the prices had appreciated so much. So, land and property is one of the most corrupt and distort. Everything, every sector in India is systemically distorted.
Okay.
Okay. And what ends up happening is so even the construction plan is dependent on the fact that we've got so much skilled labor in Dubai, which is not a distorted market, who can come back and do prefab buildings out here. When you start as part of a plan to compact your cities and increase the living standards, decrease the footprint of infrastructure required, because short high frequency metro line is much better than a long low frequency metro line, and you can operate at much higher volumes, much higher profits and things like that, where life is livable, where you're not stuck in traffic jams, where you don't have to take an auto from the metro station to go creating a jam in the first place, where you just walk to a metro, right?
Mhm.
And things like that. It is part of overall urban development where you compact your cities to 1/10 of their current size. Delhi, technically, you can provide infinitely greater standard of living, much shorter commutes at 1/10 the size you are currently, while giving each individual homeowner 25% more space. You can literally nationalize a person who owns a 3,000 square foot flat.
Okay.
Tell them, in return, I'm going to give you a 4,000 square foot flat, and you will still reduce the urban sprawl of Delhi to 1/10 of what it is if you just build up to 40 floors. Okay, it
Okay.
can be done. The thing is, you pick one city at a time and you be ready to lose that city in the next election, or not, as the case may be. See, this is why one nation, one election. Now, see, it ties up, right? Um, Now, what it does is it creates the economies of scale to bring down the price for everything. Double glazed windows. Stop going in for individual, split ACs. Put in central air conditioning, which is much more fuel efficient. Uh, 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 Centralized hot water, which is much more fuel efficient. Heat transferring. So, for example, the heat from the AC partially warms up the water and things like that.
Okay.
Make the double glazed frontage solar as well to capture solar energy. Cover your walkways. In Delhi, you don't want open walkways. You want shaded walkways because most of the year it is so hot. Put solar roofs on them.
Okay.
You reduce your carbon footprint. And you're creating economies in everything. Har bande ka you're no longer getting cheap wood windows that don't require much skill to make. You're getting industrialized, double glazed UPVC windows, which are all at your manufacturing sector. You get better stoves, better microwaves, better ovens, better fans, everything, reducing energy costs, reducing your import bill, increasing manufacturing, increasing skills, because then instead of your talentless labor that comes and builds your very badly constructed Delhi houses or bomb houses, as the case may be, you're actually training up people. You put them into training programs, they earn more, they produce things much faster because everything becomes prefab and things like that. This is part of a skilling program. See, a national skilling mission is bullshit because it's a standalone. Where is the interface with all of this? See, it's a whole of economy approach. You can't do things in silos like this.
And then you can replicate it to other cities as well. If
You can replicate it then to other cities. And the increase in the standard of living, of hygiene, is immense. This is what Singapore did. In Singapore, you don't own a house, you rent a house from the government. It is a leased house, which is either 49 years or 99 years. The very, very old heritage houses are 499-year leases. I mean, and Singapore is what, almost $100,000 per capita, bro. Like, what are you complaining about, really?
yeah.
Okay. So, you'll get rid of slums. You can have very good compact houses for very low prices because then the economies of scale kick in and the price of this thing comes down. You remove land. Land is such a wasteful cost in terms of infrastructure. You remove the cost of land from the equation.
Hmm.
And this is where, I say I'm not completely right wing. I'm always open to ideas because when it comes to land for an overpopulated country, had we been a population of 300 million that we were at independence, I would say, nay, land rights are sacrosanct. But in a country of 1.5 billion, you can't say land rights are sacrosanct because it affects everybody's standard of living then.
Gotcha.
So you put socialist into the constitution, use the socialism for something good.
But then you'll have to have political parties that are ready to lose elections for reforms.
And that is where one nation, one election comes in because you won't necessarily lose an election. If you've mobilized enough resources, start with a third tier city
Okay.
or a second tier city. I don't know what they're called. People get offended if you start with, say, Vishakhapatnam.
Okay.
Proof of concept. You've created the core capacities. Then do it with a slightly larger city that in a state that you will lose. So for Punjab, BJP will definitely lose Punjab, right? So then bring it for Chandigarh and Amritsar.
Gotcha.
वो तुम हारने ही वाले हो.
Okay.
Tamil Nadu, you're not going to win, so impose it on Madras,
But
impose it on
problem.
Madras, Coimbatore, and things like that.
But how do you do it with a
Ah,
tier 2 city when you don't have a demand supply, when you have a demand supply gap, like tier 2 cities, Vishakhapatnam,
no, no.
लोग ही नहीं है.
See, look, it's not a question of demand supply out here because what happens with the demand is there is always demand for land and flats and things, right? Everybody
Okay.
wants a house.
Okay.
There are rental houses as well. When you do it collectively, do the whole plan of development at one shot, you reduce the costs of that development massively. Okay. When you've removed the price of land from the equation, it comes down exponentially. At that point, it becomes a flat that sells for something like, say, 5-6 crores in Delhi.
Mhm.
At that point, becomes no more than 25 to 35 lakhs.
That is exponential.
Exactly, right. And I'm not even talking about basic entry level. I'm talking about 250 to 300 square foot per square foot marble floors, which actually cost the wholesaler about 50 to 70 rupees. You then benefit from 50 to 70 rupees. You're talking about marble floors, you're talking about good bathrooms, you're talking about false ceilings with LED lights, you're talking about central air conditioning, which is much cheaper when done for, a building of 40 than six individual ACs for each living room, dining room, four bedroom, whatever. Right? It is insane.
Makes sense. So you're
Right?
saying that. So you're saying that, let's say something like a one nation, one election also translates to uh, giving a breather to the dispensation and urbanization.
If the BJP were looking at it this way, I would target three states: Punjab, Kerala, Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
Okay, do it out there. At that point, you build up the capacity. वो state तुम anyway you're going to lose, so
Correct.
lose. Build up the capacity. At that point, you've built up, say, enough capacity. Chandigarh, Amritsar, Trivandrum, Cochin, Madras, Coimbatore, Madurai.
Okay.
Seven cities you have done. Now you have the concentrated ability to do Delhi in 2 years. Do Delhi in 2 years. The third year, the first 3 years, everybody in Delhi will be cursing you. The fourth year, they will see they've got a bigger house. The people in slums will see they've got a dignity of life which they never had. People in West Delhi high rise, वो छोटा छोटा जो pillbox houses होते हैं, will see they've got a standard that they never had. Then the economic benefits start setting in because cost of transport becomes cheaper. The mental stress of transport becomes cheaper because you've got a metro train going every minute. There is no overcrowding in the metro, things like that. You have better security and things like that. Your road isn't full of shit and garbage. It's actually got shops on it, cafes on it where you can sit, eat, buy whatever. The cleanliness is high. With people who don't have it, give it as government housing with cleanliness inspections. If they fail their cleanliness inspections, the house is taken away from them.
But how do you get the state governments to play ball here?
That is where one nation, one election comes in, no?
No, but you lose the state elections.
You've lost the state election, but what ends up happening is you can pass supplementary laws. So urban development is a state subject, technically, if you look at it, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. Now the thing is you can also shove things down people's throats. A government can nationalize land. Nationalizing land is a central prerogative.
Okay. Okay. So you're
You
saying that
understand?
I
This is
do in theory.
Yeah, and this is what Ambedkar said about India. India is an indestructible union of infinitely destructible states. Declare, declare India to be 545 states.
Well, that's too radical a step. But you're saying that theoretically Modi can just go and say that Chennai mein itna land hai,
You don't even need to get there. You just need to nationalize it and say National Infrastructure Development Project.
and the state government cannot block you.
You can't.
And do you think that the people in power have that vision? कि one nation, one election के बाद ये करना है, ये करना है, ये करना है कि
No.
अच्छा, they don't. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, Abhijit, I'll just move on to the last question. And I do know that you believe in the Austrian school of economics. If it's useless, just scrape it. The Javier Milei school of economics.
It's not
And
the Javier Milei School of Economics. He's a student of that school.
okay. And so are you.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I've been a student of several. I used to be a Marxist communist at one point. Right. But then I realized it just didn't work. You keep trying, trying, trying. If it fails, then it fails. That's it. You have to accept failure. You can't be like Thomas Piketty, a certified wife basher, who nobody wants to talk about his wife bashing, and wife slanderer, slut shamer, by the way, who then packages the old shit as new. There is what's his big idea? There is job insecurity and mental anxiety, and this affects economies. The government is not your bloody personal nanny. They are not your shrink. They don't have to care about your bloody mental well-being.
They don't,
They
yeah.
just have to care about education, infrastructure, healthcare. Bas, that's it. Defense, monopoly, state monopoly on violence. That's it. If you have mental problems, you bloody hire a shrink and go to the bloody shrink.
Okay, but so I come from a Guju family, right? So capitalism is, let's say, inherent,
Hmm.
which is raised market forces, and it's considered to be natural in our let's say way of life. But then I went on a date with a girl who was from Kerala,
Hmm.
and she was a hardcore communist.
Misery.
Yeah, so the dichotomy here was that till that date, let's say, I believed that capitalism is something that is Darwinian, and let's say communism is something that needs intervention, that needs intervention public. It's an ideology, and
Yeah.
capitalism is something that is natural. But coming from a person, she was communism for her was so natural that maybe I started questioning myself that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe both of them are just ideologies, and you just pick and choose. So, given that you have been a part of both of them,
No. See, Marxism is a complete invention which has failed everywhere. There is nothing natural about it. In fact,
okay.
communism defies human nature. It is the belief that human intervention can defy human nature. Okay. It is, in fact, as unnatural as bestiality. A communist is basically a non performing bestiality.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, what ends up happening with communism was what it got invented, what only 1800s, mid
Yes.
1800s.
Yes.
Out of nowhere, every country that has gone down that path has been ruined without exception. Not once has it succeeded. Okay, let's take your ex-girlfriend state Kerala. It's the biggest shithole in India. And I'll tell you why it's the biggest shithole in India. There is no industrial production happening out there. The Kerala model, see, there are two states in Bengal in India that are communist, Bengal and Kerala.
Okay.
If the same model worked, because it's the same party, CPIM,
Yes.
why is it the Kerala model and not the Bengal model?
Okay.
Okay, because in Kerala, they all left and went off to Guelph. Okay, it is the Guelph surplus model.
Gotcha.
They all go work in the Gulf. It is the remittances model, which is why when you go to Kerala, all the ads you will see are for jewelry or for flats because they don't trust the negotiable instruments of the government. They don't trust investments. They only trust gold and hard property. Okay. Bengal had nowhere to go.
Okay.
Instead, what they did was they came to the rest of India and started plaguing India with their communist bullshit. So all these Bengali intellectuals ask them why they don't live in Calcutta. Why do they infest the rest of us like a goddamn virus?
But then why has it gotten so much traction? Like a billion people are communists. Let's say.
Because economists are fundamentally at their root frauds. A CA, if a CA makes a mistake, a CA goes to jail. You know this, right? An
Yes.
economist can be wrong 100 times, they will never go to jail.
Okay.
If a CA had ever said what Thomas Piketty had said and it had failed, a CA would be in jail for malpractice.
Gotcha.
Economists don't.
Engineers pay consequences. Yes, sir.
Engineers pay consequences. Economists never do.
Okay.
My profession, I don't really pay consequences, but I do. Like I've got an accuracy rate of say about 70-80% with geopolitics. That 30% when I get it wrong, I get it horribly wrong and people pay downstream prices for it. But it's the 70% that keeps me afloat. I don't go to jail unlike say a CA.
But you're telling me that you face monetary consequences for that.
Well, the people who depend on me face monetary consequences on risk and things like that. No?
Okay.
And if you consistently keep getting it wrong, then of course you will become irrelevant.
Okay.
Right? So I got Putin not invading. Well, I said Putin was going to invade, just not at that particular point of time.
Mm.
Uh, which was wrong, right? It was, I mean, had it been a risk analysis, you would have lost quite a bit of money.
Gotcha.
But the point was the overall prediction was right in that war was going to happen under Biden. ठीक है? Uh, uh, Afghanistan, like I was 50% right in that the Taliban turned out to be very anti-Pakistan and pro-India.
Yeah.
But I was also 50% wrong in that I thought the Afghan army wouldn't collapse as quickly as it would.
Okay.
There are no criminal consequences for me, but there are professional consequences and there are monetary consequences for my employers or those who listen to me down the line. And if you keep getting it wrong, obviously they will refract back onto you.
Yeah. If you are a cephalogist, you would
An
be unemployed.
economist is the one person who can keep getting it wrong, 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 wrong again, wrong again, wrong again. 100% negative strike rate and still
Okay.
be a celebrated, quote unquote, celebrated Piketty economist.
Good. So you're saying that if you're a cephalogist, you are unemployed, by the way, in your case.
I'm not a cephalogist.
No, but if you had been, and if you had been wrong, so
No, but
subsequent,
a cephalogist pays a price. Unless you're a quack cephalogist who also does politics on the side, uh, then you don't pay a price. But then see, you turn into a socialist, so you don't pay a price because socialism rewards failure.
that's convenient, I guess. But yeah, Abhijit, final question I had. I'll just take final question. So, since I am from Gujarat and it's like it's my state in the sense, and I was just looking at GDP per capita incomes, and you very aptly mentioned that it's just poor people competing against poor people. It's like when you're talking about Gujarat being a rich state, it's not really. But the factor that, let's say, my uncle mentioned here was that Gujarat is doing it without an alcohol economy. Let's
Hmm.
say there's no corporates in Gujarat, there's no alcohol economy, and if you look at states like Karnataka, it's at 20%. In UP, it's 15%. Do you think that is a factor in the Gujarat economy, like it's hampering it down, or
No.
do
See, it's at most preventing, say, 10-15%, which is significant. See, unlike Tamil Nadu, which depends heavily on its alcohol revenues, right? Which shows you how useless a state Tamil Nadu actually is. That government revenue has to depend so heavily on Bevadas. And you saw what happened yesterday on the Surat to Phuket flight, the direct flight between Surat to
the
Phuket.
Bangkok? Yeah. Yes.
Within 2 hours of the flight, all the alcohol had been drunk. That was 15 lakhs worth of alcohol that got polished off on one flight. Okay.
Yes.
Now, alcohol isn't going to improve you. The problem is the overall regulations, restrictions, the mismatch, the education mismatch, the distortions of the market. Alcohol is a very small market distortion in the overall scheme of things.
Okay.
Alcohol, say you're not going to become a rich state. Let's be clear about it.
Acha.
10-15%, but then that's like, again, it's like तू कितना कमाता है 100 रुपए, मैं 115 रुपए कमाता हूँ, मैं मुकेश अंबानी हूँ भाई, 115 रुपए कमा के तू मुकेश अंबानी बनेगा क्या? नहीं ना.
Okay.
So it's not that much. It's
And where do you look at the Gift City project? People were bullish on it. People were buying land. At least my relatives were buying land.
all of these are going to add little blips here and there.
Acha.
The Diamond Bourse is a huge infrastructural improvement which will show significant gains, but overall it's just going to be a blip. Now you can say incrementalism में थोड़ा blip 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 करके ये होता है, but if you want, you can't become a first world country till you're willing to do the radical changes required. At 1.45 billion, you don't have the luxury of incrementalism. You have to choose what elections to win, what elections to lose. I would say nationalize Madras, nationalize Coimbatore, nationalize Madurai, nationalize Tuticorin, nationalize Cochin, nationalize Kannur, nationalize
Chandigarh.
Chandigarh, Amritsar, Ludhiana, Patiala, this thing, rebuild them, give them to different contractors and say you'll get bigger, bigger contracts. Do solar, do energy saving, because see, then you also get into the green economy. And I'm not
Okay.
saying get into the green economy because I'm an environmental fanatic. I'm just saying it because it reduces your energy bill. It is sustainable. And especially in this country, more than hydro. Hydro can be quite destructive to the environment technically because, hydro comes from this belief that all water is a resource for you to use. No, it is like blood in the veins. If you drain it at one point, it will destroy everything below it. Okay. So water is a resource you can't afford to waste like that. You reduce the water consumption and things like that through efficiency. 60% of our water in this country is wasted in uh, just wasted.
Okay.
ठीक है. You can't afford that, right? The amount of energy that's stolen, $20 billion a year of your electricity produced is stolen. That's four nuclear reactors that you could have built every year. Five, actually. Five nuclear reactors that you could have built every year. And it also means that nobody is willing to come to India to operate electricity on a build to operate basis because they know they're not going to get the money back. It's going to get stolen.
Gotcha.
You see that this systemic, you are not dealing with systemic distortions. You're accentuating systemic distortions.
But the brute force thing. So let's say, do you consider China to be a superpower today?
I do, yes.
So when you say that India is
But
never
it is
going to be
not a
a
hyperpower like America. China is a superpower like France and Britain and Germany used to be once upon a time. They are not, there has never been a power like America. Okay. And the big difference is Britain, contrary to the bullshit they teach us at university, Britain and France and Germany were not capitalist states, they were mercantilist states, which is exactly what China does. China believes in keeping everybody poor so that you have to buy Chinese production. America believes everybody becoming rich is good because it expands markets. And production should go where production is most efficient.
no, but then why do so $10,000 economy, 1.5 billion people is a superpower. So why do you think that India will never be a superpower? In your lifetime, we can reach the 10,000 goal, can't we?
We will reach 10,000 at a point where 10,000 will be equal to about 2 3,000. Inflation भी होता है ना.
Fair enough.
That's the problem.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Abhijit,
And
thank you.
remember, they've reached $10,000 doing so much infrastructure.
Okay.
You haven't been able to do anywhere close to that infrastructure and that kind of market rationalization.
Yeah. It's
Of
yeah.
course, China is also a heavily distorted market for a different set of reasons, but that's a different matter.
Maybe we can take that up in the next podcast. But yeah, thank you for coming on the show, Abhijit.
Done.
And it would be great if you could share this on your social media when I do it.
Done, done, done. ठीक है.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.